Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Queue. Today I am very excited to welcome Kenji Hayward. He is the head of customer support at Front. Kenji, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a fan, and this is great to be on.
Awesome. So let's get right into our topic. So, you were telling me a little bit about the concept of, trying to get customer support a seat at the adults table. It seems like customer support is often viewed as a cost center and it's not truly valued enough in a company's overall success, when in reality it's critical. It's the backbone. So how can CX leaders go about getting that seat at the adults table, communicating that value and advocating for the role of a support team?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of want to go back a little bit and just, because the adults table, kids table analogy, depending on how your family Thanksgiving were, it might not connect. So just to know where that came from. Typically in my house, I've got a pretty big family, and all the adults sit at this really big, adults table, right? And conversations are happening, decisions are being made, and then for the kids, you get that little, little janky one, and it's in the corner, and you're hanging out with your cousins and your siblings, and you're just having a lot of fun, which is also great too. You're still participating, and you're part of the event and gathering, and then a term has come up in the support community, over the past 6-7 years, which is the support teams often feel like they're at the kids' table within their company. And that could be a meeting that they're not invited to, or a decision that was made about the product without consulting the support team. I've experienced all sides of this, so I'm happy to chat about it. And my experience, probably more interesting, is what it was like sitting at the kids' table. And yeah, it sucks. It's not a great place to be. And I think that for people listening to this podcast and for the guests that you've had on, if you're a head of support, that your number one job is to have a happy team, create a great customer experience for customers, and do all these things. And sometimes you feel limited by not having the access or resources that you need. So that's one. And then two is, now I'm really happy because I work at a company that does, we're like a support solution as well as many other things, but I think we have that built-in value of we really value support. I don't feel like I ever have to invite myself to the adults table. It's just a given thing. It's great. It's awesome being at the adults table. I highly recommend it. You should join if you're not there yet. And we could talk about kind of steps on how to get there. But yeah, if you're feeling like you're at the kids' table, you're not helping out with decisions, products releasing features that you did not consult on, or the sales team released this new plan that you're like, I would have loved to have known this 3 months ago before it got rolled out. There's a few things you can do. I think the first thing is just understanding what the adult table is for you. For me, it was a meeting that I was always left out of. So it was literally a table. It was literally the biggest conference room table at the company. But for you, it might be something different, right? It might be a Zoom call that you're not on, or it just could be something else that means a lot to you that you want to be a part of. My advice would be, first, identify what that is. What is your adults table in your company and in your world? And then find out who the stakeholders are. So who is sitting at the adults table? Is it the C-suite? Is it something that doesn't make sense, you would never be a part of just because of the way the company's structured? Or is there a natural way that you can kind of almost invite yourself to the table by, finding natural topics that you can bring up to discussion? So those are just a few things and an overview. And my number one advice that helped me, even here at this company, was just talking to my boss, right? Even though we're heads of supports, we all report to somebody. You might report to the head of product. You might report to the head of engineering. You might be like me and on the sales sides, where I report to the head of success. But have that conversation with your manager and just let them know, are there conversations I should be a part of? I would love to partner. I'm not asking to be an active voice, but it'd be cool to just be a fly on the wall or even get a recording. I feel like that's a good place to start.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. You mentioned that it hasn't always been the case for you to be at the adults table, to have your company recognize the value. So as you were moving through your career, interviewing for new jobs, what did you look for to kind of get a feel for if your leadership would be supportive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Here's a trick. This might be a really terrible suggestion that I'm making, but it works for me. So just to preface that, every time that I'm interviewing for a company, I contact the support team, and I do that for a couple of reasons. Like one, it helps me kind of study like their support flow and gives me like good things to talk about in the interview. I can be like, hey, I noticed you use Zendesk for this. Have you thought about doing it this way? The second thing is I can kind of get a gauge of the happiness of the support agent and their tone and just like how they feel in general. That gives me another like data point of like, okay, like this person seems like pretty happy here. They must have like a good thing going with the support team. And then what I'll do in the actual interview when you get a little farther along is I'll bring that up. And when I get to the highest point, maybe I'm talking to the CEO or whoever the decision maker is, I'll ask them like, what did you do before there was no support team? Like every company, whether you're a startup or this giant company, there's always a point where that's not the first hire you make. Like you said, like sometimes support is a sunk cost. You might hire your sales reps first, your marketing team, your engineers to build the product. Support might be literally the last thing that you do when you kind of get your team built out. So ask them what they did before that. Were the CEOs in the queues helping out? Was it an all hands on deck approach and everybody was helping out with customers? And the reason that I ask that is that gives me a good idea like, okay, wow, that might be in their DNA already. Like they're used to helping out with customers. They know the pain of support. They know the value of it because they lived it. And that's a big reason why I joined Front, because in my interview that came up, I asked, Mathilde, who's the founder, like, hey, what did you guys do before you had support? And she said, oh, I worked the queue. I mean, obviously, like I took sales calls and I also answered customers, and that made me feel pretty good about my decision.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great tip. I'm writing it down. I don't know if you can see.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. And I imagine that, Front being a software supporting support teams probably also gave you a good indicator of how they view support.
But on the flip side, I've turned down a lot of positions based on this. Like, I'm like a small mid company kind of guy. Like I just discovered I'm not the corporate, like I don't see myself working at a giant company at any time in my career. And that's just me. But even for the bigger companies I've talked to, like I've talked to some pretty big companies over the past few years that were interested in hiring me. And then I just email their support team or I'll read their documentation and I'll be like, wow, this is really rigid or this is not my style. So I think using those resources you have available before even talking to somebody really does help. I think it could weed out a lot because you're also interviewing the company. Yes, they are interviewing you, but if you're a head of support, you're high in demand. Like you should have we talked about this, like have some swag. Like people are looking for this role to fill. Every company needs a support team. Every company needs a head of support. If they're talking to you, you're probably one of the few handful of ones out there. So definitely leverage that if it would be helpful. Be nice to the support team though. When you write a ticket in, don't send some jerky response. Not that you would, but I try to be authentic and I'll read the help center and I'll be like, here's an actual question they can help me with. And I'll send it and then I'll get a response and I'll give them a good rating just so that it's a good experience for everybody. But I told my friend about this and he just did it completely the wrong way. And he asked like an impossible question. And I'm like, you're just wasting this company and this poor support team's time. But that's how I would do it.
Okay. So in the interview process, you're actually sending in a ticket. Yep. Oh,
typically,
smart.
Like if I'm super interested, I'll say like, hey, can I get a trial account? Can you just like set up a demo? I just want to learn more about what you're doing, and I promise I won't break anything. You can just set it for a week, and I'll contact the support team during that time. But even if I don't do that, I write in every single time, anytime I'm looking for a company.
Okay, I love that. Some good tips.
Just live and learn. This is over time. But hopefully that helps people. And I'm sorry for all the support teams who are going to get more tickets from heads of supports, but I think it's a good move.
Okay. So in the past question, I asked you, like, what do you look for in the interview process? But what if you are already employed at a company and you're struggling to maybe with leadership who doesn't understand the value, you're struggling to, get that seat at the adults table.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide if you should, A, stay and try to advocate for the role of support and try to get that seat at the table, or B, decide to leave and look for a job elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, something I've been through. So I've been through this before. It's a lot harder when you're in it. That's a huge decision, right? Like leaving a company is much tougher than, like choosing a new one when you're in the interview process. But I would say you need to know your limitations. Like our jobs as head of supports, like I said, is to create the best customer experience. Like I have very high standards for myself, for my team, and for creating that experience for customers. If I work at a company that will not give me the resources to do that, that's when I'll start thinking about leaving. And this has actually happened. I won't say which company, but this has happened at a company that I've worked at before, where the team is killing it. We had like killer talent. We're firing off on all cylinders on SLAs, and like customers are happy, our CSATs are high, but we were having a tough time growing the team. And I kind of ran into this wall of, I need more resources, but the company was like, hey, we only have so much, for this, because it is not, they didn't say it's a cost center, but basically it's not a revenue generating team at the company. So here's what we have to work with. And that really hindered me and my ability to make my team happier, because happiness and support, it's a lot of things. And I know a few guests have talked about it, but I think the most basic need is there's the queue, and there's a lot of other stuff. There's projects, there's time that will, kind of give them that enrichment in their role. And I reached the point where our team was so strapped, and I did everything that I could as a head of support, that I felt stuck. And for me, that's not something I can get behind. I need to have the buy-in to be able to, to execute my vision, which is to have I just always want to have the best support. And I think that's everybody. I don't think there's any head of support or a company in general who's just like, I really want shitty support. I really want subpar support. That's my goal. But that's what happens sometimes because the message doesn't meet the, what we're kind of putting out there for resources.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Once you get hired at a company and you're feeling good about the choice you made, that you have good support from your leadership, what are those first steps that you take to ensure that you have that seat at the adults table, that you have the processes in place to make sure support is involved in those conversations? Like, what do you do first?
Yeah. Step one for me is to be proactive. Like, you can't wait for someone to tell you that you're an adult. Like, just like in life, there's not this moment where your dad's like, all right, Kenji, you're an adult now. Like, go do life stuff. It's the same thing at work. And the reason I say that for support, what I found, and I'm just speaking for myself, so I'm not trying to generalize us as a group, but our strength is we're super empathetic. We love people, we love customers. Sometimes that could be our weakness when it comes to these type of skills of maneuvering through corporate and trying to get to this imaginary table. So I would say step one, like I said before, define what your table is. It might not be a physical table. It could be a meeting. It could be a Zoom call. It could be a person, right? And then after that, I would just assess what are blockers for you to wedge your way in. Because again, I wouldn't wait for the invite. I would think about what do I need to work on to get to this point? Some natural ways to do it. Like if you have a company all hands, volunteer. Be like, hey, I would love to just present a 5-minute presentation on how the support team's doing, or I got this really awesome customer story. A customer wrote into support and they left this awesome CSAT feedback. Is that cool if I just share it? Company's going to say, of course. We would love to hear that. We love hearing about people who talk really well about our products and our fans. So that's one natural way to do it. As a head of support, our job is really to get in the spotlight in any way possible, and that could be just the all hands thing like I talked about. It could be talking to your manager, figuring out which meetings those are and why you're not invited. But I think that's would be the first step for me, is just not get too fixated on adult versus kid, and more focused on what can I do to be proactive just to get into those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to rewind a little bit. So you mentioned earlier that support people are generally a very empathetic group. I mean, it's your job day to day to help people, but that can be a strength and you mentioned a weakness. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that, all the things that make us great support leaders, they are those strengths. Like we are empathetic. Like I said, we love people. We love having a happy team. And like that should be our number one job, is to make sure that we have a healthy, happy, mentally stable, team that's doing a great job. But there's another side to it. And I think if you get too fixated on the empathy side, you lose sight of the business aspect, which is what the bottom line is for the company. You have to be able to tie your goals of happy customers to the company's goals overall, right? And it might be anchoring to the sales team goals or the marketing team goals or the engineering team goals. You have to have those clear OKRs aligned, so that it's not just about all the warm and fuzzies and making customers feel good. How do you translate that, and how do you explain that that's valuable? Why is it valuable for Meredith to like using Front? Why is it good? Why is it valuable to have a really good support team? Because we could have a subpar support team if we really wanted, but that's not what we're trying to do. So I think that that's something I struggled with early, and now I've gotten a lot better about doing that. And an example is actually, this is super nerdy, but I printed out my OKRs because I didn't know how the screen was going to work. And I'm happy to share this. This is not like super secret info, but here are some examples that I use. So one of the goals for us here at Front is to accelerate growth, right? Like super general statement, every company wants to grow. The way that I translate that for my support team is I would like to achieve 24/7 escalation support, for our biggest customers, right? Or number two, having our top 20 customers have less than 2 hours, because the way that I translate that is these are really big accounts for the company. It's high impact. It's high impact on revenue. So if we can keep them happy, we'll keep the company in a good place. And another one is being indispensable. That's another value for us here. And for me, this is where the empathy comes in. Being indispensable for me is having happy customers. So no churn, no gross churn created by a support experience. So meaning like you wrote into support and you didn't have such a bad experience that you're just like, I quit. So that's always a good goal to have. Keeping a CSAT rating of 95% or above, which we always do, that's a good indicator. And then for me, launching a brand new help center in the next quarter, because I think that's going to directly impact the self-service experience. So those are things I think about in my role. I think about the ways that I can just take what I'm really good at naturally, which is being empathetic, having an empathetic, awesome support team, and then making sure that whatever we do rolls up to the company's goals, and then have that be measurable.
Okay. Yeah, you kind of answered my next question I was going to ask. Like, what when you are advocating for the role of support and the importance of having a great support team, yeah, what do you talk about? How do you measure that?
Yeah, pretty much OKRs, I would say, is the way to go. There's a lot. I mean, there's some OKRs I share with the company, and then there's like really detailed weekly ones that we do within our team. Most of them are metrics based, so response time, handle time, all those like the standard ones. But then on top of that, CSAT, which is another one that we look at. But you're also going to want to look at just, again, if you can tie it to churn, that's a big one. If you can show that your support team is truly making a measurable impact to keep customers around, that ties into retention, which ties into ARR, which will keep the lights on, and supports is generating value, and we are contributing to the bottom line. Even though we're not directly a revenue generating team, we're creating revenue by keeping customers around.
Okay, gotcha. So it sounds like throughout your career, you've really figured out how to, identify your version of the adults table, how to identify companies that value support. So as you build a support team, how are you helping your team leads, your agents, etc.? How are you helping them kind of develop those skills and learn these types of things that you've learned throughout your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what I do is here's the natural way that I do it. I'm like inviting them to different things. So whether it's a project So like my support manager right now, it's the first time that she's managed a support team. So I will, add her to threads that I think are helpful for her to see, even though she's not on the email. So again, like it doesn't have to be a meeting. It could even be like this email chain or alias that you're not a part of at work. I'll just bring her into the conversation so she can read it and just kind of understand. And that's one way that she can learn. And then within my team, I hire amazing people. Like that's our job, is to hire people much smarter than us and much better at support than us. And I feel like I've done a really good job of that. So I leverage them in different places. So in our product meeting that we have within the company, I'm not even there. I leverage our content manager and somebody from our support team, and they represent us. And then they come back and then they share the knowledge with the rest of the team. So that's what I'm doing. It's something I wish somebody did for me when I was younger and when I was working because I started in tier one and I did tier two. I was a technical support engineer. I've done all those roles, and nobody proactively came to me and was like, "Hey, would you want to join this? Like, is this something you'd be interested in?" Because more often than not, they probably are. And even if they're a little like apprehensive, I just tell them like, "Hey, you're just join. There's no expectations that you have to come up with an amazing idea. Just be there, absorb it, and it's a really good experience."
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, not only are you learning the topics that are being discussed, but you're also learning how they are discussed. Like how things are brought up, how things are communicated at a high level.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not always a natural inclination. I know in my career, I've definitely had to figure that out kind of on the fly.
I think it's getting harder now too, because we were talking before earlier. There's a lot of changes with working remote. There's no physical table, like we said, so you can't just pop into a Zoom meeting and be like, "Hello, I'm going to join this now." I think it's going to be even harder to do this, to be honest, without having those personal connections. Because like I remember when I had first heard about this topic, I think it was at a support driven conference that I attended, and most of the examples were based on like in person, like, oh, you bump into someone in the kitchen and then you're like, "Hey, I heard you're doing this meeting." Like that doesn't happen as much anymore. So you have to be more thoughtful again about being proactive. And I think for me, like my key advice I would give to support leaders is you have to learn the business. You can be the most amazing support leader and have the happiest team, but if you can't actually drive decisions and drive change that will help grow the team and help keep the team happy in the long run, you're focusing on the wrong things. And that's a mistake I made super early on. Was I wanted to be the best manager. My team loved me and I love my team, but then I got to a point where I wasn't able to get them the things that they needed, and that's where that was a downfall, and that was a bad on my side. So that's something I learned, and this time that's not an issue. And I try to straddle that balance of having a very happy team, and we're very close and we're very tight. We're not a huge team; we're less than 20 still, but still being able to have the presence to work with executives and to understand why it's important to make sales. Like you just have to know how the whole company works. I think that that's something we don't do often enough, because the queue is crazy. Like you're going to be sucked in. If you're a growing company and if you're like a startup, you say you're going to do it, you probably never will. You're just going to be so busy trying to figure out what to do next and which customer to respond to today. And that would be my advice: is just take a step back, talk to your manager, see if there are mentors internally that you can lean on. There's really good podcasts like this that you can listen to. There's YouTube channels. I do that a lot. But there's different ways where you can get knowledge on these topics that you might not naturally learn at home.
What are some of your favorite YouTube channels for that?
Oh, man. It's changed so much over the years. As I told you, I just had a kid recently. But I really like Justin Kahn. He has a new channel. So Justin Kahn, he spoke at our office before, but he's the founder of Twitch. And he's talking just about like how it's like to be a founder. Because for me, again, I want to know what it's like on that level. I want to know what founders think and like how their brains work. So and he's super funny also, like crazy stories about like working in Silicon Valley and selling Twitch and all these other cool things. And then, yeah, other than that, just random sports stuff. I'm big into hockey, so I'll watch like replays. Because when you have a kid, you have like 5 minutes to watch something. So YouTube's my go-to. So I could just watch like a chunk of a highlight, and then that's my day. But check out Justin Kahn, The Quest. The Quest is a great podcast. Um, I just like him, and he's super. He's got a really cool style, and he's got really good information.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like a good source for just kind of general business knowledge and figuring out, especially like for startups, figuring out how they work. And then I imagine that would be helpful as a support person. You kind of figure out where support fits into that overall strategy, where you can kind of leverage your skills a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I want to back up to something you were saying a little bit earlier. So, like the kind of in-office versus remote thing. So, over the last, year and a half, how were you still advocating for your team, still getting in those conversations remotely without being able to just bump into somebody or pop into someone's office?
Yeah, I think it's easier at front using front because that's what we do. We just kind of like you can loop people into conversations and you can join convos. But uh, yeah, I definitely did not just pop into random Zoom meetings. That's not something that I did. But a couple of things that I did that worked were like the all hands. The all hands meeting is this might be at your company, but like your company meeting might be on a Monday, might be on a Friday. I guarantee they're doing it virtual now. So there's still that opportunity to be like, hey, can I get on the docket? Like, is that cool if I have 5 minutes to speak? Other ways I've done it is actually, this is a cool one if you're not using this, but if you're using CSAT and you're probably using Slack, I know everyone uses Slack at work, you can build like a nice API connection that will share CSAT 10s with comments and have that go to one of your channels, whether that's your support team's channel, or maybe it's like your random channel, or if your company has a channel to share wins, that's a perfect place for it, and it gets you automatic visibility for your team without doing anything. We do that now. It works great. And again, you want to do it with 10 with comment, otherwise you're just going to flood flood the chats. But yeah, try that out. That's a good one. That's worked really well. That's a low lift. It's automatic, and that way you're kind of just reminding the company like support team's here, support team's doing great. They just got good feedback. So that's another thing that I do.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. It kind of reminds me of what we call internal marketing in the marketing world. Like, not only are you marketing yourself externally, but you also have to communicate what you're doing within the company. And that's just as,
Yeah,
if not more important.
it's true. Yeah, I think that even outside of support, even probably for your role, Meredith, like we have to be even more present. We have to find ways to just make ourselves more known because we're remote. And yeah, and I think that all those same things apply to support. So for support leaders, you can look at a Google Calendar. You can literally see the meetings that people are in that you're not. There's a one way. You could do the sharing the Slack stuff. Like that's a good way for your team to get a little bit of shine. And then for you, again, you should be proactive. Like don't wait for the invitation to come. Invite yourself, but not in a you just show up way. Be like, I see a meeting coming up in 2 weeks. Looks like they're talking about features. Maybe it'd be really nice to have the support experience and like what it's been like when we released this bug or like this feature, and then just email. I mean, hopefully you work at a company where it's okay to reach out to somebody and ask. But I've worked at companies where it was actually like really tough. And it might be because it was in the office, but I've been in that position where it's been tough to have those convos. So I can see it both ways. We're not all the same, like tech startup companies, and it's all collaboration, open desk and everything. And I think in those cases, if you work at that company and your support team's not being valued, there's not a ton you can do differently. But I think again, maybe just talk to your manager, like have that open conversation, and just go to bat for your team. Like that's what we're here for. Like we have to just push ourselves out of our comfort zone. None of us want to do this, but we have to have those difficult conversations, not for us, but for the betterment of our team.
So earlier you were mentioning that, some companies, they say they want great support, but they're not willing to back it up with resources. So
Yeah.
can you just kind of walk me through what resources means to you? I mean, obviously there's funding, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a lot more that could go into that.
Yeah. That's a good question. Number one is funding. I think that you can, or headcount. I think they're kind of go hand in hand. But I would say like that's the basic needs. Outside of that, you need just the internal structure. Like you have to be able to collaborate with your engineering team. So I worked at a company where there was like this invisible curtain where we could submit bugs, but like we literally just couldn't, debate with them or give them feedback on the bug from customers. So that's another one. The company has to have the value of collaboration and low ego, where that you can work with the product team, you can work with the engineering team. Because like I said, that's not the same at every single company. It sounds like it should be, and I agree it should. But if in those situations, that's a resource that was lacking before, was just having access to the right people. And then the third thing, being in those meetings, like the literal adults table, like if there are decisions that are being made that impact you and impact the support team, and you don't even know about it, that's terrible. And who knows what's coming down the pipeline, right? When you're in that situation, you're kind of flying blind. And I've done this before. I've worked at companies where the release goes out the very same time that we find out, and then you're like, oh, okay, well now I need to test this because I have no idea what's going on. So I would say that, yeah, beyond money, having access to the right people, having an environment where you can collaborate, and then, yeah, being in those discussions where decisions are being made. Not every decision, like you don't have to be at the C-suite table with the CEO and the CTO, like that's overkill. But if there's a decision being made that's going to impact you and your team, positive or negative, that's something that you would need as a resource. I think that to go back to one of your earlier questions, that's a company I might consider leaving if that wasn't happening.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I think you mentioned that there were some examples of times when it didn't go well when you didn't have that access. But can you tell me
Yeah.
about some examples of when things did go well? Like what a great rollout or a great,
Yeah.
what something like that looks like?
Yeah. I mean, it's gotten so much better these days, but my favorite release that we did at Front was like there's this huge migration. Like we were going from basically everything was brand new. It was like Front 2.0. Like this was the biggest release that we had for the company a few years ago. And we had literally everyone in the support, like in the literal support queue with us. We had product managers on our side. We had engineers on our side. They were helping us with the queue, like together, tackling it because we were getting an influx of volume with all these new things that were releasing pretty rapidly. But I think for me, that was like one of the best examples of just how to do it right. And we didn't even have to ask for the help. They proactively reached out and they knew that it would impact the support team. So they kind of put their hand out and were like, hey, can we help you with this? So that's a time that it went right. Here's another example of a time that it could go right. And it's really cool when it does is if you've ever been in a company offsite, like how we used to do this like years ago, people used to get together and go places and hang out as a team. The support team is always left on the hook. Like support does not shut down.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's riding in our like a AV, or they're playing golf, and then the support team's like the queue's still here. Like we can't participate, right? The great thing about this company that I work at now is we have that all hands on deck approach, which is like, all right, let's make sure the support team can participate in this. So we're all just going to smash the queue in the morning while we have breakfast, and then we'll have a couple people watch it, while we're hanging out and doing other fun stuff. So that's a time where it goes really well. And right now, I feel like I'm in all the meetings that I need to be, and I don't force myself, so I don't like to force an update. I'm not in every all hands. There's not a recurring support update that's happening from me to the company. But when I think it's helpful, I'll volunteer and I'm like, hey, is it okay if I talk about this really good experience that we had with a customer, or just trends that I'm seeing that our team wants to share? And again, it doesn't have to be me. It could be somebody else from my team. But those are ways I do it. I just naturally find a way. And once you're at the table, it's so much easier. Like you're already here. You don't have to really figure out how to get invited. Like you just kind of get to pick and choose your battles at that point.
Okay. I love that example you brought up about kind of the all hands on deck approach. Is that generally kind of an as needed thing at front, or is there a training process? Like, do product people have to spend time in support? So I
Yeah.
think I've heard you mention before that, I don't know if it's at front or a previous role, but every like new hire or some new hires would have to spend time in the queue before they went on to their
That's right.
role.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't do the all hands on deck anymore. I think it works really well when we're a smaller company. Plus, we're not doing offsites and stuff. So, but at one point, we were doing it every single week. Yeah. But at Front, one program that our support team developed, and it's called Support You. And what Support You is in your first 2 weeks of joining Front, you get access to the tools that we use. You get to check out the queue. We don't force people to jump in and work on things. But when it was early on and we were in the San Francisco office, my favorite part was actually the graduation ceremony. So we'd have people go through our training. Most of it was self-guided, but a lot of it was shadowing with the support team, just so that they can, get that empathy of, hey, here's what it's like to work with a customer. And then at the very end, what we would do is we would take the class to a coffee shop, which was the Pinterest building next door, and we would just work in the queue for an hour together. We would get coffee, everybody work on the queue, everyone does 3 tickets, and then you graduate. And then while we're doing that, the office is preparing like this mock, like literal graduation ceremony. So when they come up, there's graduation music playing, everyone's clapping. We want you to feel good about support. Like we want our team to be someone where you look at, we're like, support is awesome. Like that's so cool. I wish I could work on that team. And one of my biggest achievements is I never thought in my life I would have other teams want to join support, but I've had a CSM join the support team. I've had 2 engineers join our team here. So it speaks a pretty big volumes when that happens, because I don't think that's ever happened to me before in any other roles or previous lives.
Wow, that's awesome. 'Cause I hear about, folks going from support to somewhere else and not necessarily the reverse.
Exactly. Yeah, usually it's a great jumping off point, and that's another thing that support leaders kind of struggle with is, the career growth path and how do I get them to want to stay in support versus like veering off and wanting to be a CSM or an engineer or a product manager. But yeah, I've been really lucky to have that happen. And I've even had front customers join front support. So that's also been another cool thing that's been new to me is
Nice.
getting it's the best because you get such an interesting perspective of like, what did you like about what we did? Or what did you hate about what we did in support? So her name is Phoebe. She's awesome. And yeah, she's definitely been a game changer for us to get her on our team.
Wow, yeah, talk about like the inside look.
Yeah, so I think that I have taken it a step further. Like there's the adult table thing, but I think I've reached the point where I'm so comfortable at the adults table where I'm proactively trying to figure out like what's the next step? Like what is the next step for the support team? I'm ahead of support. What's next for me? Like maybe, why am I watching these YouTube channels about Justin Kahn as a founder? I think because I have bigger aspirations and I hope that other heads of supports too. This is not the end all be all. It's a great place to be. You're kind of like at the top of the stack when it comes to your support career. But I also like to think about like, how can I just continue to make myself better? And I think I'm in a pretty good place with the support side. So I'm really interested to learn more about sales and how that works. And recruiting is another one that I would love to learn more about because I think that that's such a great way to, put your touch on your team as if I can figure out how to do that more. So yeah, I'm motivated to do that.
That's awesome. It's like not only did you get your seat at the adults table, but you are just adding chairs, bringing more
Yeah,
people in.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, there's room. There's definitely a lot of room here.
awesome. Well, that's probably a good place for us to kind of start wrapping up. Before I ask you my final question, is there anything else that you want to add on this topic that we haven't touched on or that I forgot to ask?
No, I mean, yeah, I think one thing I want to say is this is no knock against the kids table, right? Or the adults table. It might not even exist. It might be a completely flat org, and this is just a figment of my imagination that's happening for you. So just know that this is my experience, and these are things that I see in a tech company that I work at. Might not be the same thing for you. And I also want to say there's nothing wrong with doing okay support. Like the only problem I have with it is when companies say they want amazing support, but what they're saying doesn't match what they're giving you. Here's a good example. Frontier Airlines, terrible support, but they own it. They're like, we're the cheapest flight from Stockton to Las Vegas. You're going to get terrible support, but it's really cheap. I can respect that. I can get behind that because that gives me, if I was, hate to be their support leader, but if I was their support leader, I know what my vision is. I know what I have to work with and I can build off that. But a lot of us are in the dark where they're like, Meredith, I want you to build the most amazing support team. I'm going to give you $10. Go for it. That's, that's a much worse place to be. One, it's great that they have this vision, but I think that that's our job, is to show the value so that we can make sure that we are happy doing what we're doing. And I'm glad you talked about like the, looking for new jobs and things like that, because if that's you and you're stuck, maybe something to consider. But yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, perfect. All right. So my final question, it's kind of just a big general one, but what advice do you have for up and coming support leaders?
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be to learn as much about the business as you can. It's really tough because when you're up and coming, you might even be working in the queue. Like I was working in the queue, even here at Front for the first year and a half. So my advice would be, one, get out of the queue naturally, like gravitate out of there, but in a good way. And then start focusing on things that will just build you up to be, more of a presence within the company. So if you're not comfortable with public speaking, YouTube videos, there's great tutorials on how to do that, but that might be something to work on, something small. And then just, work on those traits or those things that you need to kind of get to the next level to feel comfortable to, being invited or inviting yourself to the adults table.
Perfect. That was a great answer. You just kind of brought it all the way back around.
I'm glad that worked out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kenji, for taking the time to do this. This was a really fun conversation. Lots of really actionable tips. So thank you very much again.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure, Meredith. I'm sorry this took so long, and I thank you for your patience in the scheduling, but I'm going to continue to watch these series, and I definitely recommend anyone who's listening, subscribe. The best support podcast there is out there for up and coming leaders and just anyone in support.
Oh, thank you. If anyone wants to reach out to you or contact you, what's a good way to do that?
Best LinkedIn, reach out to me there, or you can email me if you like. It's Kenji@frontapp.com.